Hi y'all, did you miss me? So I wanted to complete a series that I promised long ago when I did my intro to indie music series. I wanted to tell you guys about some of the essential indie albums from that time period. Some of these albums are my absolute favorite albums, and I could honestly do like 30-minute videos on each and every one of them. So it's going to be hard for me to kind of blow through them and to get it, in a timely fashion, but I hope you guys bear with me. And I hope that this video introduces you to some music that you haven't heard or reintroduces you to music that you might have loved at one point and forgotten. So without further ado, let's get started. I should warn y'all, buckle up, this is a long one. I really tried to do this as fast as I could, but these are such great albums. I will also post this on my YouTube channel so that you can watch it as background play too, okay? The first era I want to talk about is the Blueprint era. I think we cannot talk about the blueprint of indie music without talking about Radiohead and specifically Kid A. I still remember where I was when I heard Kid A for the first time. I was in calculus class and the kid in front of me played it in my little Steve Jobs like iPod, and it is an incredible song. Music felt both alien and emotional all at once, and it was a total reinvention of sound, and it really did fundamentally change music's DNA. Next, one of my absolute all-time favorite albums, Transatlanticism. Oh my God, it's an absolute masterpiece. Ben Gibbard's writing and arrangements are absolutely timeless. That album hits just as hard as it did back in that day. I still remember when I moved from Boston to Oakland, California, listening to that album as I crossed like the Bay Bridge, and the sort of nostalgia, the longing, the hope, the love that filled me. Honestly, I like burst into tears. Like cinematic, honestly. And that song hits just as hard as it did 20 plus years ago when it was released. Next, I'm still talking about Ben Gibbard. I wanted to talk about Postal Service Give Up. This was a collaboration between Ben Gibbard and Jimmy Tamborello from Dintel with vocals by Jenny Lewis on select tracks. It's called the Postal Service because they literally mailed tracks across the country, hence it being called the Postal Service. I know now in the age of COVID that is not as unique, but at that time collabs were typically done in person. So it was actually a really kind of cool and revolutionary idea. The album's techie yet very tendered. Some of my favorite songs from it are Such Great Heights, The District Sleeps Alone Tonight, and This Place is a Prison. Oh girl, I love that. This place is a prison. These people are not your friends. It totally embodies millennial dislocation and longing and sort of earnestness, And speaking of millennial longing and agony, Bright Eyes, I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning, absolute must include, okay? Conor Oberst was totally unflinching in his discussion of depression, love, self-destruction, addiction, SI. It was so vulnerable and so brave, and a lot of us who really may have suffered from a lot of real mental illness, really found ourselves being seen in this record. Honestly, Lua and First Day of My Life still get me till this day. Again, I have another core memory with First Day of My Life that I could share memories about every single one of these songs, every single one of these albums. But these are literally soundtracks of heartbreak and transitions. It's just greatest music, greatest era of music ever, okay? This next era, I want to call the golden age of emotional storytelling, which is chamber pop, folk, and existential ache all at once, and emotions became very orchestral and were painted with all kinds of instruments and vocals and all kinds of stuff, I have to start with my favorite artist of all time, Sufjan Stevens, and one of my favorite albums of all time, Illinois Girl. It's maximalist, it's baroque, it's literary. It's part of his 50 States project, which he said it was a joke at the end of the day. I never really believed him. I think that he had hopes to do it, but then realized it was completely insane and then backtracked. Some of the highlights of this album, the whole album is a highlight, okay? Predatory Wasp of the Palisades, though, absolutely excellent song. Obviously, Chicago, one of his most well-known tracks. Casimir Pulaski Day, totally devastating and quiet. Same with John Wayne Gacy, also devastating and quiet. He used orchestral instruments, records, trumpets, strings to turn storytelling into art. And Bryce Dessner from The National and Annie Clark, aka St. Vincent, were also on his tour. And this was was the first person I think to actually discover Annie. And, she went on to be an incredible, revolutionary, fearless artist, So anyway. Next is Bon Iver for Emma Forever Ago. Oh, girl. He wrote this album alone in a Wisconsin cabin during isolation and heartbreak. It's haunting, it's spare, it's deeply human, and it honestly redefined intimacy in songwriting. It honestly was like a winter hymnal for the brokenhearted. I still remember where I was when I heard this album for the first time, and honestly, anytime I'm going through heartache, it is definitely one that I turn on. Tracks to recommend, obviously everybody knows Skinny Love, but I love The Wolves. Girl, what a great track. Anyway, this album, incredible. So many core memories to this record. It's incredible. Must listen. Have to include our first indie album of the year with The Suburbs Arcade Fire. Sprawling, nostalgic, and elegy for lost innocence. It was chamber pop that became universal, and it was the first time an indie record won Album of the Year at the Grammys in 2011. It was great. It was Indie World's coronation of sorts. And lastly, I had to include Fleet Fox's Helplessness Blues. It is honestly millennial existential folk and ache at its absolute peak. I will never get over some of the lyrics of Helplessness Blues. I've been raised up believing I'm somehow unique, a snowflake distinct among snowflakes, unique in each way I could be. Now, after some thinking, I think I'd rather be a functioning cog in some great machinery serving something beyond me. Girl, anyway, literally embodied the millennial condition, and it just was like really something. Ugh, I love that album so much. This next category I'm calling the age of experimentation, and I have to start with Merriweather Post Pavilion. Baby, that album is everything, girl. That album is totally timeless. It's psychedelic, it's euphoric, it's immersive. The lyrics dissolve into the sound, and it's just pure emotional soundscape texture. I saw them at Primavera Sound in 2011. Barrier, girl, one of the most incredible experiences of my entire life, especially like the sea of like 100,000 people behind me. Girl, it was incredible. It was incredible. Like it's one of the best shows I've ever been to till this day. And there's a lot of white men on this list, girl, so we have to diversify a little bit with Annie Clark here, St. Vincent. Baby, St. Vincent's Strange Mercy is one of my favorite records of hers. She's such an incredible lyricist and really, really talented guitarist. And her androgynous femininity and guitar mastery and her sort of raw vocals and raw lyricism and raw self-expression just really just culminate, I feel like, on this record. My favorite songs are Surgeon and I would say Cruel. Actually, there's so many songs. Chloe in the Afternoon I love too. But Cruel, by the way, is an Cruel Summer is an interpolation of Cruel. So if you listen to Cruel by St. Vincent, you'll hear when she says Cruel, you'll hear that Taylor interpolated the way she says Cruel in Cruel Summer, you know? By the way, her live performances, very notable. She used to literally fling her body into the crowd and crowd surf with us. And it was just like so insane. I've seen her live a couple times and she's a great performer. And y'all know I love Sufjan Stevens, so I have to include Age of Odds, baby, okay? This was a radical left turn into electronic chaos. One of these days I am going to do my episodes on Sufjan. Whether y'all like it or not, whether you watch it or not, is going to happen, okay? It was inspired by visionary artist Royal Robertson, whose schizophrenic cosmetology mirrored Sufjan's inner turmoil. He was battling a neuropathic illness, which honestly I think was Guillain-Barré. I thought that in 2011, and then when he developed it in 2023, I felt that it was low-key confirmed. But anyway, some of my favorite songs on the album are Vesuvius, All For Myself, and I Want To Be Well, and obviously I love Impossible Soul, which is a 25-minute, like, honestly, masterpiece. It has like 5 different sections in it, so, but a fun fact about All For Myself, Kendrick Lamar interpolated it in To Pimp a Butterfly, Hood Politics, I believe is the song he interpolated it in, so. When talking about experimentation, we got to talk about Bide Orca by Dirty Projectors. This is an experimental, eccentric, and completely original album. Absolutely fearless, blended Afrobeat, art rock, and R&B almost in an architectural way. It was totally fearless, totally idiosyncratic, and it was honestly like so curious, so fun, so bright, so whimsical, you know, in so many ways. And like this album is incredible. I had to include it. Now, this group of albums, I want to call this the age of genre collapse, which is basically when genre boundaries basically fully disintegrated and emotion became basically the only category, okay? Vampire Weekend, I feel like really embodied the sort of disintegration of drama. I picked Contra. I could have picked their self-titled. I could have picked Modern Vampires of the City. All of their albums are great. They're one of my favorite bands. But I feel like Contra is kind of the apex of their sound in this time period. Afrobeat, ska, chamber pop blended with Ivy League irony, given Ezra Koenig's English major. This band was formed at Columbia, and the lyrical wordplay and sonic precision was so cerebral and really defined cerebral pop. They were kind of clowned on at their time, but their music, it was so good. So even the critics and the detractors couldn't undermine them or stop what they were doing because their artistry was absolutely undeniable. Rostam and Ezra's partnership is at its kind of creative height here, or perhaps it is at Modern Vampires of the City, debatable, but anyway, amazing album, okay? James Blake, girl. Oh my God, what a great record. It was born from the UK dubstep underground, and James Blake used dubstep and also his incredible falsetto and his incredible vocal range. He does not get enough noise for, okay? His voice was literally used as an instrument, and he would use it honestly as a way of painting these gorgeous emotional landscapes with sound. It was absolutely a blueprint for sort of expansive dubstep pop. I really believe Billie Eilish Hit Me Hard and Soft was very much inspired by this album, down to it being a blue cover where the person almost looks underwater. But I think it's a great album. It's a good album, but I think y'all, if you really like that album, you should listen to the original of where it actually came from, which is James Blake's self-titled, okay? By the way, he did Beyonce Forward in Lemonade. And Ezra Koenig, by the way, from Vampire Weekend, Hold Up is inspired by a tweet and also a demo that he did with Diplo. So, yeah. Next, I have The Weeknd, House of Balloons. Y'all may not know but The Weeknd started off as an underground, unknown, faceless, kind of nameless pitchfork darling that everybody was so intrigued by. He was so mysterious. It was dark. It was cinematic R&B that really turned pain into an atmosphere. I still remember seeing him live at Royale in Boston, which was this tiny club, maybe 1,000 people, maybe 500 people at the venue. And it's crazy to see who he became long term. Actually, when The Weeknd became bigger, I had a hard time believing, is this the same guy who I saw with House of Balloons? It's crazy how his career has expanded. But Pitchfork really was making and breaking and telling people who was what in music at that time. And it's so sad to see how they've fallen. I am going to do my rise and fall of Pitchfork one of these days. And last but not least, I have Kanye West, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I know that's not an indie record, but it is indie in spirit. It was maximalist, genre bending, and absolutely visionary. He is a villain now, but this is absolutely his magnum opus. He collaborated with Bon Iver for Monster and Lost in the World and fused hip-hop grandeur with indie textures. And Kanye's curiosity was actually really unique and his talent as a producer is really undeniable. He would randomly show up at James Blake concerts and Sufjan Stevens concerts. It was clear that his tastes of music expanded across genre, and he was able to kind of bring sonic ideas together in a way that really no one else has been able to since then, and even he doesn't seem to know how to do it anymore. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. There's so many honorable mentions. The albums behind me: High Violet, The National, XX, self-titled, Panda Bear, Tomboy, girl, LCD Sound System, This Is Happening, what a great record, girl, Beach House Teen Dream, Antlers Hospice, Imogen Heap, Rilo Kiley. These albums redefined music's emotional vocabulary, gave words to feelings that we didn't otherwise have. They made being weird cool, they made being vulnerable powerful, and they made experimentation accessible, okay? These albums defined indie music. They gave language to emotions that no one had put into words yet, and they made being vulnerable and weird and unique cool as hell. And I think that that's something that's really missing from the youth these days, this generation, where there's so much pressure to conform because of this idea of cringe culture. indie music was the definition of earnestness and what y'all call cringe, but it was a way of expressing yourself in your most earnest version of your humanity. And that uniqueness was what made it cool. Anyway, I hope that this unlock some core memories from some of you guys, and also introduce some of you guys to music you might not have heard of. These are all excellent albums. I love every one of these records so dearly. Like, they're so close to my heart. So I know this was kind of a long one, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making it. I love talking about this era, and I am going to continue the series, especially during the summer. So looking forward to talking more with you guys about it. All right. Until next time, y'all. Bye.